All right, Gideon. Judges chapter 8. Last few weeks we've been talking about the same character. We're going to finish up on him today. And it gets interesting after his death in the next few chapters. But the last few weeks we've been talking about Gideon. Aaron talked a few weeks ago about the fleece and the prayer and the obedience to the call. Last week I talked about the dangerous 300, the dogs, and how these men went up against unsurmountable odds and won victory that was just a miracle, basically. Chapter 8, verse 1, we're going to work on today. Can somebody turn the lights on a little bit brighter? Chapter 8, we're going to spend a little bit of time in chapter 8, and then we're going to bounce to Luke here in a few minutes. But Judges 8, verse 1. Who wants to read verse 1 for me? Perfect. Somebody else other than Alex, because he's turning the lights on. Somebody else has to read. Don, you got your phone? Aaron's got his paper out. Let's do it.
Paper version. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, "What is this that you have done to us? Not to call us to commit the fight against Gideon." Yet they accused him fiercely.
So here's this group of brothers. They're aggravated with Gideon. So to get to chapter 8, verse 1, we got to back up and add a little context. Remember, there was this battle. Gideon and his 300 men, they had this battle with the Midianites, and, he scuttled the Midianites, and a lot of them scurried off and fled. And so after this battle, Gideon calls for his brothers, the Ephraimites, and says, "Hey, I need your help. The two princes that I've been chasing, they're in your land. Cut off their water supply, cut off these barriers, and go find them." And they do. They bring them back. They kill the two princes that Gideon was going up against, and they bring them to him, and then they contest with him. They're a little frustrated with him. And I mean, not frustrated, what it said. They sharply talk to him, right? That's typically like a word you'd use like an argument. Like, I'm freaking pissed at you. Why would you do this? And so why are they so mad? I mean, what's the big deal?
They got two more guys.
Well, they chased the two guys, but the frustration comes in the fact that Gideon didn't invite them from the beginning to partake in this little party. Gideon took his own 300 men that God whittled down and whittled down and whittled down, and then he went and followed God and did this thing, and the Ephraimites are like, "Hey, why didn't you call us to fight in this battle?" What is this called?
Jealousy.
Pride.
Oh.
Right? Because why? Who in their mind, who gets the glory for the win of this battle? Gideon. They wanted a part of this glory. They wanted a part of the fame of saying, "And we took down the Midianites." And so they're like frustrated at the fact that, like, why didn't you call us? Because now we're not going to be seen as the victors in this battle. You are. I remember several years ago, this was 15 years ago, there was, and I might have told this story before, we used to meet after Katrina with different churches. And we would have like prayer services, and we would gather together, and we would meet at one church and another church and another church, and everybody would lead this prayer service. And it came to my turn to lead the first prayer service for the gathering. And we were meeting at Raleigh Middle School. Yeah, it's still Raleigh. Yeah, Shaman Elementary got changed. But we were meeting at Raleigh, and we had a prayer service there. And I was like, we're going to do something different for this prayer service. I went to my people, I said, "You guys are going to lead the prayer service for me. I'm not going to be involved in it at all." And so I delegated leadership to 4 or 5 different people within the community, and I want you guys to come up with it. And so we used Raleigh, and we went room to room. So we had like 4 or 5 rooms, and each room was dedicated to a specific prayer. And so people would come in, and there was like sand in one room, and they would put their hands in the sand, and they would like touch things. And with everything, it was all experiential. Every room had some type of experience that you would see, you would touch, you would feel, you would hear, you would smell, in all of these different rooms. And then they ended in the cafeteria with music, and everybody sang. And one of the things that I said, this is my only leadership thing that I want to say. I said, don't let anybody in the building until everybody's there. And so everybody like stood at the front doors, and the crowd started to build, and crowd started to build. And, I was one of the people in the crowd. And I wasn't the only pastor that was in there. There was several pastors that were in the crowd. And so the people went through, had this experience. The music and everything was a powerful night. So many people were like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. Because every person went through there, they prayed. The following week, I met with the pastors who were furious with me. Because one, I didn't let them in the building. They had to wait outside. And two, one of the pastors said, how do you expect the people to pray if we're not up there praying? I said, what? They did pray. No, they need a general to lead them in prayer. I was like, this is fascinating. They couldn't see what had actually happened and the power of that night. Keep reading, verse 2. Aaron?
He said to him, what have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grace of your tree better than the great harvest of Israel?
Mm-hmm.
God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then I make her against him, society.
Excellent. So Gideon demonstrates something powerful here. The Midianites are furious with him. Why didn't you invite us into this battle? One thing you don't see him doing is he doesn't argue back. He doesn't say, well, God told me to do this, or I couldn't trust you, or any of these things. He basically says, like, well, guys, who am I? I'm just this lowly leadership guy from this no podunk town. I don't even have grapes the size of your grapes. Everything that you guys have is better than what I have. Gideon humbles himself in front of these people. He doesn't even take credit for the victory. He lowers himself to the people that are in front of him. And one of the things, well, several things that we've seen over these past few chapters that we've seen from Gideon. One, we've seen that Gideon is faithful. We've seen that Gideon is obedient. We've seen that Gideon is courageous and dangerous. And now we see that Gideon is humble. A leader who doesn't need to be recognized as the most important person in the room. And this is exactly why the people that followed him respected him. This is exactly why they look at him and they say, we want to follow you. That's why his men love and respect him, because he is humble. Today we live in a society that, as I've said before, is the most stressed, the most anxious, the most medicated that we've seen in history. People so desire to be respected by other people. They even demand it sometimes, not realizing that this actually achieves less respect from other people. When you demand respect from somebody else, it doesn't work out so well. And in fact, when you do so, it actually makes you feel less respect for yourself when we do these things. The story of Gideon, as we continue to finish this and almost close, is a story to be looked at from a leadership perspective of a man who is absolutely humble. And as we continue this story, well, the rest of chapter 8 gets a little bit bloody. And sometimes it's taken out of context a little bit because we don't understand why the things happen the way they do. And I'm going to skip some of those to just keep the time frame low. But as we move forward in the Gideon story, there's a few people who, from a military perspective, commit treason. There's some punishment that takes place and all these other things. But then we end at verse 22. And who's got verse 22 for me? Don, you still don't have your phone out? Come on. I need your... Aaron, 8:22, please.
Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian.
They want a king. They've followed this guy in battle. They respect this person. He is courageous. He is bold. He is fearless. He is obedient. He is faithful. He's humble. And they want him. You lead us. They want a king, somebody who is going to tell them what decisions they should make, how they should live their lives. What are the rules that we're supposed to follow? How does God want us to live? You tell us. We're giving you this power and giving you this authority. We want you to lead. Now, any parent in here knows how important it is for all of their children to give them guidance. Children need guidelines. They need do's and don'ts. They need to be able to know, how do I live my life? As parents, we teach our children these principles. But as parents, we also know that our role is to raise our children to become adults, to not always tell them, this is what you should do. Our role is to teach them how to live so that they then have these capabilities to do it for themselves. That's the imperative of parenthood. That's our role. So what does Gideon say in verse 23, Aaron?
I will not rule over you. My son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you.
I won't. What does Spider-Man's uncle tell him? With great power. That's not what he said, Josh. He didn't say, you help him out, Nate? With great power comes great responsibility. Gideon is asked by his people, you lead us. You tell us how to live. We want you to be our general, our leader, our president, our king. How much humility does it take to say, no, I won't? You already have a leader. You have the Lord. You have God. And not only that, in that statement, he's basically saying, it is your responsibility to do this. You are to take responsibility for your own actions, for your own life. You are to take initiative to study and learn and know God yourself personally. You lead yourself and your family as you yourself follows God. Isn't this what a few generations before him said? Isn't Joshua the one who said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. My job is to take care of my house. You do the same. As I was looking at the story of Gideon, I was reminded of the story from Luke chapter 14. So if you have your Bibles, turn to Luke 14. Mr. Russin, verses 1 through 3, please. 14, 1 through 3.
We Sabbath was went to the armies and house of the ruler, of the Pharisee. They were watching him carefully. And behold, there was a man before him with beauty. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Is that one?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeshua's invited this house of these Pharisees, these teachers, these leaders in the community who have a paradigm, who have a belief system of this is how we are supposed to do things. And they're confronted with somebody who's sick. And Yeshua is going to heal this person. But what's the problem? In their paradigm, in their belief system, you can't heal on the Sabbath because there's no work to be done on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to heal somebody when we're supposed to be resting. Yeshua knows that they're stuck in this paradigm. He knows that this is their belief system. And he knows that they're missing what actually is happening in their midst. They're missing the fact that the Messiah is standing right there in the midst. They're missing the fact that the power of God is working through Yeshua and has the ability to heal somebody. Never mind that they don't see healings regularly in their life. They're not healing anybody. But here, there's the Messiah and all these stories about him healing people. And he's in their midst, in their living room, in their kitchen, and he wants to heal this person. But there's a problem. The problem is their paradigm, what they believe to be true. Verse 4.
So they remained silent. Then he took him and healed him. And sent him away.
He actually did it. He did it. What do you do in this situation? You're not supposed to do this. But if you do this, oh my gosh. So now you're in a conflict. Like, is this the right thing or the wrong thing? I mean, this is a powerful thing. We've never seen this before. How could you actually heal this person? But are you supposed to do this? What's the right thing to do? The gasps that take place in that room, you could probably hear them even if they were silent. Keep going. 5 and 6, please.
And he said to them, which of you have a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on the Sabbath day will not immediately pull him out? And they could not reply to these things.
This is the power of choosing. The ability to expose somebody's hypocrisy by using a Bible scripture or using a practical event. If you were in this situation, he says, what would you do? And uses a situation that they probably go through every single Shabbat. My animal's stuck. I gotta take care of him. I gotta help him. Something's wrong. I gotta do something. But not for a human being. That would work. You can't heal somebody because that would be work. Keep going. 7 to 14.
Now he told the parable to those who were invited. When he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at a table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted.
7. For he who exalts himself will be exalted. And how many of us struggle to want to be seen, respected, known as the guy? Yeshua says, you enter into a room, you enter into a place where you want to be esteemed. Just don't be that guy. Take a lowly seat. Take a place where if somebody does recognize you, they can bring you up and they can exalt you and they can say, hey man, this guy's great. He gets to sit in this seat. Because you don't want to be the person who just assumes and expects everybody should respect me, and somebody come up to you and say, hey man, we need you to move it and go to this lower seat. Because how does that actually feel when that happens to you? The inner anxiety, the inner stress, the inner insecurity that takes place is now expanded profoundly. As opposed to being the one who just humbles yourself and lets somebody else exalt you. These are the emotions that take place in each and every one of us. We all want to be exalted. We all want people to respect us. We all want people to think good of us. So allow people to do that. But if you expect it, he says, don't get mad and upset when somebody puts you back in your real place. He says, exalted. Exalted is this idea that begins with being elevated to a higher status, being respected. But I also found a definition that said exalted is a state of extreme happiness. When somebody exalts you, you feel good about yourself. What holds so many people back from experiencing the healing power of God is connected with this. Because I think for so many people, especially in today's society, they don't experience the power of God. They don't experience God's voice. They don't experience His healing power. They don't experience what He is trying to do in their life. And why is that? Because most people have calluses not only on our hands, but on our hearts. Our
hearts have become so calloused that we can't even experience or believe that we can experience the power of God. This isn't much different than the Pharisees who were in that room. Because of their paradigm, because of their belief system, they believe this couldn't happen. Or maybe it's not supposed to happen. Because this is something I've never seen or experienced, and I've been taught this way, and this is what I believe to be true. And so because I believe it to be true, therefore it is true. This shouldn't happen. How many of us struggle with the same thing? I've never seen God move. I've never seen God do these things, so therefore it's true. Or maybe you're like the Sadducees, who are very similar. It's just not true at all. It's not that or because of my doctrine that says this, or because of the Torah that says this, but I just don't believe it to be true, period. Throughout history, there have been several movements of God. Even in the past few decades and several decades here in this country, we've seen different movements from the laughing movements to the hippie movements to all these stuff. There's a new movie coming out called The Jesus Revolution, and I typically do not like Christian movies. I might actually go see this movie because it's actually about a movie of Calvary Chapel and how this church kind of got started. It got started out of a bigger movement that was taking place in the United States with a bunch of hippies. And there was two groups of hippies. There were the hippies that wanted to smoke dope and sing and this other stuff, but there was another group of hippies, and I shared that lightly, because they wanted something different. There was something missing in their life, and they were hungry for something. And this Calvary Chapel, this movement that began, was birthed out of this idea that they wanted something. They wanted to experience the power of God. They didn't want to just be taught doctrine. They didn't just want to be taught this is the rights and wrongs, and these are the things to do. They wanted to experience what God had done before them, and they wanted to be a part of that. I was watching that video clip, and then I read an article not more than a few minutes later about a college in Kentucky, Asbury College. I don't think you've read this article. There's a movement of the Spirit that is actually taking place in this today. At this college a week ago, they did a weekly mass, or what do you call that? Chapel. They had a chapel, a weekly chapel. So Friday, a week, 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago, had a chapel. They were just doing a regular thing. They said, call people up, had an altar call for it. If you want to be prayed for, you want to do this stuff. And people started coming forward. And then the people were leaving. And the word kind of spread. Students were coming in. They weren't leaving. They were going to class. They were just there. And then the president of the school came. The president of the student body came. Like, there's something that's happening here. And then the word got out, and people from the town started coming into the chapel, staying in the chapel. And students are like bringing beds, and they're like putting the beds in the back of the chapel. And they're not leaving the chapel. In fact, the word got spread out. There's people from all of the United States that showed up. In fact, yesterday, there was people from all over the world that have flown in. They wanted to take part of what is taking place in this chapel. And I read one person that said, it's not like the other movements that take place. You enter this place, and you instantly feel this peace that I've never experienced before. And for so many students, and so many people, for so many young people in our world today, what is the biggest thing that we struggle with? Anxiety, stress, worry. And in this small little one-street town, there are people flocking because they want to experience peace. And God can give that to them. They want to be there. There's one more passage in James. James chapter 4 says this. Where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? You desire and you do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask, and you do not receive because you ask eagerly in order to spend it on your own pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? But he gives greater favor because of you. This he says, God resists the proud, but gives favor to the humble. Are we humble as people? Do we allow our pride to control our emotions, our actions, our choices, and our decisions? Do we struggle with pride? Or what the world thinks about us? Do we struggle with what our friends think or say about us? Are we willing to sacrifice our pride or change our paradigm to see and experience what God wants to do in our lives? Next week is Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras week. But for some Catholics, the focus isn't Fat Tuesday. The focus is what? Ash Wednesday. It's the beginning of Lent. What is Lent?
Lent is 6 weeks of preparation for Easter, Good Friday, the death of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time to, we always used to say give up something, but like to say now do something for people, change the world.
Right. As I
I studied Lent, and I've been talking to a few Catholic friends,
and I wanted to get to the heart of
Lent, because for so many people, Lent is like, well, I don't eat, meat on Fridays. I'm sacrificing, and it.
You don't need crosses, right?
Yeah, for so many people, Lent has lost its meaning, and I wanted to know what's the actual heartbeat of Lent. And as I was thinking about this, there was 3 things that I learned about Lent. Obviously, it's about remembering what Messiah did for us. It is about focusing on what Messiah did as we lead up to the Passover and as we lead up to the resurrection. Then there's 3 things that Lent you're supposed to do: prayer, fast, and give. Those are the 3 main things that you're supposed to do for these 40 days. Now, we're not Catholic, but as I read through Judges, and I look at these cycles that these people continue to get into, what always gets the people in trouble in all of these cycles? What's the main thing that we always point to? Every single one of these stories, they always get themselves in trouble because they didn't do what? What? They didn't remember. They forgot. They forgot what God had done. They forgot all these things. Every single one of these times it says these people forgot. But isn't that sometimes what prayer is supposed to be about? Isn't that what fasting is about? Isn't that what generosity is about? What if we, next week, as a community, each one of you individually, started your own schedule and dedicated yourself over the next 40 days to pray every single day? What if we created a schedule where you were going to fast for something over the next few weeks? One of my Catholic friends said, hey, you're going to do Lent with me. He didn't even ask me. He just told me, we're going to do this. Okay. I said, okay, what are we doing? He said, we're going to fast every Friday. Okay, are we giving up meat, Lenny? He's like, no. We're going to fast. We're not going to eat. We're going to fast for 24 hours. And we're going to show up at this building. We're going to walk the levee. We're going to pray every Friday. We're going to do this. I thought, okay, I've never practiced that, and I've never done that with somebody. No, he wants to do the rosary.
Oh, he's
He's a rosary guy. So we're going to do the rosary, which is fine because for me, the rosary is about meditation. And so we're going to pray, we're going to fast every Friday. And then the other part is generosity. Why do we give? Why do we give? Do we give because we feel guilty, or do we give because it's a reminder of what God has given us? And what if we spent the next few weeks, as we lead up to Passover, and we lead up to the resurrection weekend, what if we spent these next few weeks in this mindset of, I'm going to pray every day. I'm going to sacrifice something for the next 6 weeks. And I'm going to live my life. Anytime that I see somebody that is in need, I'm going to give. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's clothes, maybe it's my time, maybe somebody needs help working on a car, whatever it is, what can I give over these next few weeks, because I can use that as a reminder so that I can remember what God has given me. Because as we lead up to Passover, one of the things that I want to experience is I want to experience a group of people who we all assemble for this Passover meal so that we can remember, not just at that meal, but we can look back over the last 6 weeks and we can remember, these are the things that I experienced leading up to this night.
I think that would be powerful if we were to do that. And why? Why do we do that? Because it's in our vision. We are as together. Our vision statement says this: to become a spiritual community that seeks restoration, authenticity, and wholeness, and live as Yeshua lived. Are we living this way? And even better yet, are we inviting other people into this experience with us? Are we inviting other people in our community in the journey that we are on? It's not just about us. We live for a greater purpose. It's not about me. We're inviting other people to experience that same thing. I challenge you to think about that the next few days as we approach Ash Wednesday. What are you willing to give up? It doesn't have to be food. Maybe it's Facebook. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's film work. Maybe it's thumbs. Figure it out. What are you willing? And here's the thing. A fast is a sacrifice. It's something that you don't want to go without, but you know you probably should. It's meant to be hard. If it's easy,